A pleasant day to everyone. I'm going to discuss with you party politics in the Philippines. So let us first define what is party politics. Refer to actions or political behaviors motivated by what is best or right for the political party rather than for the people. Ito yung mga ginagawa ng mga political party na nakabubuti para sa kanila kaysa sa taong bayan. Example nito, when a politician passes a bill that is beneficial to his political party or his political career but harmful to the people he is representing. This is an example of party politics. Two common framework, patron-client factional, and clientelistic cluster networks. Dito sa first, it is a relationship between the patron and the client. And kapag dumami na yung client ni patron at marami nang involved, nagiging na siyang clientelistic cluster network. Clientelism and patronage. Clientelism, relationship in which an individual of higher socioeconomic status, which is the patron, uses his own influence and resources to provide protection or benefits, or both, for a person of lower status, which is the client, who, for his part, reciprocates by offering generous support and assistance, including personal service, to the patron. So, the characteristic of clientelism, reciprocity. Nagbe-benefit si patron, nagbe-benefit din si client at paulit-ulit itong nangyayari. And another characteristic niya is inequality. So we have the higher socioeconomic status and yung nasa lower status. Clientelism, direct exchange of a citizen's vote in return for direct payments or continuing access to employment, goods, and services. So, ito yung bayad para sa boto at pag na-elect na yung politician na yon, they can access to employment. So, the visible example of this is pag may bagong mayor, wherein yung kanyang mga sumuporta sa kanya ay pwedeng maging casual during his term. Ang clientelism, mas malawak siya as compared to patronage. And patronage is a specific strategy that may or may not be used as part of clientelistic exchange. The difference? Patronage, a patron must be an office holder or have access to state resources. Clientelism, patron may or may not hold public office and must rely on alternative means of exchange. It can be private resources or yung resources na gagaling sa partido. Clientelistic parties from a comparative perspective. Under clientelistic systems, parties create direct bonds with voters, usually through side payments such as pork barrel. So, nagkakaroon ng direct bond kasi mayroong bayad at isa na dito ay ang pork barrel na naging issue during the term of Benigno Aquino III at i-discuss pa natin, alamin pa natin ang tungkol sa pork barrel later on. Party that delivers the most of material inducements get the most competitive advantage over rival parties. So, kung sino ba ang mas may naibibigay, so siya, may advantage siya kumpara sa kalaban. Clientelism is necessary but not sufficient. Hindi sapat ang clientelism. At kailangan ng combination ng dalawang factors na to, centralized government fiscal structure, and institutionalized protection of political clienteles. And nangyayari ito sa Japan, and this is stack the advantage against opposition parties. Wherein sa Pilipinas, ganito yung sistema or yung nangyayari. Combination of clientelism and weak centralized bureaucracy that has led to perpetuation of patronage-based, vote-seeking organizations largely built around dominant local political clans and warlords. So, mahina na nga yung bureaucratic, yung centralized bureaucracy at kumbaga, yung kailangan ng itigil kasi mali, pero pinagpapatuloy pa rin ang patronage base kasi dito kumukuha ng boto at ito ay malaking bahagi nito ay nasa local political clans and warlords. Institutional roots of clientelistic parties in the Philippines. Political parties involved primarily into office-seeking parties refers to as primarily interested. So, dito sila mas interested ang political parties. Securing the benefits of office, getting its leader into government, enjoying access to patronage, even if it means sharing of powers with others, or pursuing strategies which fail to maximize its shares of votes. So, ganun ang parang aim ng political parties at nakikipag-share pa sila ng power at kumbaga hinahayaan nila yung mga nag-share ng vote sa kanila na ipagpatuloy ang mga estratehiya kahit na ito ay hindi successful para lang mabigyan ng karampatang or mapalitan yung naibigay nitong share of vote. Roots in colonial state building, roots in central-local relations, and roots in the rule of the game. So, unahin natin yung colonial state building. A party's decision to pursue or screw a patronage-based strategy largely depends on the sequence and timing of two events. So, kung ipagpapatuloy ba nila or kung hindi na ipagpapatuloy or i-avoid na nila ang patron-based system, nakadepende sa dalawang to, formation of constituency for bureaucratic autonomy, kung makakabuo ba or pagbuo ng nasasakupan na kayang i-govern ang administrative policy making body at makalipon ng mas maraming boto. Process of colonial state building was undertaken in the following manner. Local autonomy, mas nauna kaysa sa central autonomy. Pagkabuo ng mga partido ay mas nauna sa pagkakaroon ng national elections. Elections preceded bureaucratic institutionalization. Adapting the indirect rule strategy of Spanish colonizers, the American colonial administration relied heavily on local clans or principaliat to consolidate colonial power throughout the archipelago. So, inadapt lang ng American ang indirect rule strategy ng mga Spanish kung saan nakadepende sila sa mga local clans para ma-unify ang colonial power throughout the archipelago. Partido Federalista, country's first political party, was founded by Filipino elite politicians in 1900 to facilitate clientelistic relations with their American colonial patrons. So, ito yung kauna-unahang political party sa Pilipinas. Americans introduced elections from the municipality in 1901 to the province in 1902, national legislature in 1907, and culminating in the presidential elections under the Philippine Commonwealth in 1935. Establishment of Philippine Assembly, the precursor of Philippine Congress. So, kumbaga, itong Philippine Assembly nauna at ito yung naging dahilan para ma-develop ang Philippine Congress. So, in 1907, opened the way for local politicians to aspire for national power. Siyempre, dahil meron ng national legislature, yung mga yung mga local officials na gusto na rin ma-elect sa national legislature, so they aspire for national power. Nationalista Party, o yung NP, and Liberal Party, the LP, rivalry dominated Philippine politics from 1946 until 1972, ruptured by 14 years of authoritarianism under Marcos dictatorship. Ouster of Marcos in 1986 and restoration of democratic rule reboot the Filipino party system, but with the same pre-martial law patterns of competition emerged, just with more than two parties. So the first political party in the Philippines is the Partido Federalista, and nagkaroon ng dominant party, which is the Nacionalista Party and the LP. And pagdating ni Marcos, natigil ito, nagkaroon ng authoritarianism na political party, at nung mawala na si Marcos, nagkaroon na ng multi-party system. Two major concerns of local politics: who is best at generating funds from the central government and control its allocation? Kung sino ba ang mas nakakakuha ng maraming pondo galing sa central government at makontrol nito ang pamamahagi, at who controls the major economic activities, both legal and illegal, in the community. Overly centralized administrative decision-making and seemingly weak capacity for sustained administrative supervision of provincial and local officials. So, ito yung legacy of American colonial period. So, I guess, yung reason kung bakit nagkaroon ng federal state of government sa US, kasi ito nga siguro natuto dito yung mga Amerikano. So, sa federal state, kayang-kaya nilang pamunuan yung central government, and then pagdating sa mga states, so may kanya-kanya silang autonomy. So, pwedeng natuto na yung mga Amerikano na kasi hindi nila kayang i-supervise na yung nasa provincial and local officials. Institution building project under the rubric of Filipino self-government. Provincial governor were indirectly elected by municipal officials in 1902, followed by their direct election in 1906. So dati, ang nag-i-elect ng provincial governor ay mga municipal officials. Provincial elites became the major building blocks of national elite with their election into the national legislature in Manila in 1907, and with this, the American administration co-opted. So, kumbaga, yung mga nasa provincial, yung mga mayayaman na nasa probinsya ang naging dahilan para ma-elect sa national legislature itong mga national elite. Kaya, yung mga nasa American administration, nag-integrate sila ng mga members ng mga mayayaman. Kasama nandito ang landowners, merchants, and professionals, all of whom held key local positions in the late Spanish colonial era. Chief Executive has exercised vast control over fiscal powers and patronage resources. Oo naman, ang President, ang hawak niya ang control dito sa dalawang to. But in the absence of programmatic party system, nakadepende si President sa mga local political bosses and clans para makaipon ng maraming boto, maraming suporta, at ma-implement ang central government policy. Administration's primary consideration has always been to centralize patronage resources rather than to centralize administrative structure. So, sa government, meron na talagang administrative structure na present. But, ang administration daw is nagkakaroon ng primary consideration dito sa centralized patronage resources, wherein itong centralized patronage resources, ito yung mga naibibigay sa mga sumusuporta sa kanila, at in return, yung mga sumusuporta sa kanila ay mayroon din na ibibigay sa mga nasa current position. The introduction of single-term limit for the office of the presidency destabilized the legislative party system since legislative candidates now tended to affiliate themselves with the most viable presidential candidates by switching parties. So, kung single term na lang ang president, for example natin, si during the time of Benigno Aquino. So, kung single term lang si Benigno Aquino at mayroon nang nabuong mga partido that time, so kung magpapalit na naman ng president, yung mga magkakandidatong nasa legislative, so makikipag-affiliate sila sa pwedeng manalong kandidatong president. So, lilipat sila ng party. Aspiring presidential candidates think they have a higher chance of winning without an incumbent running for re-election. So, the reason why they think that they have a higher chance of winning kasi if the incumbent candidate kung yung nasa pwesto, for example natin si Duterte, kung tatakbo siya for the next election, so may bus control baga siya sa fiscal power and patronage resources. So pwede niyang gamitin yun in order for him to win again the election. So that is the roots and the rules of the games. Sa party-based clientelistic politics at the national level. The regular split and merger of political parties into ad hoc coalition further weakens party linkages in society, thus replacing democratic accountability with clientelistic accountability. So, nagkakaroon ng regular split and merger of political parties. So, nagkakaroon nga ng party switching at kumbaga, yung mga nagkakaroon din ng coalition, kumbaga, yung kung sino ba yung nagdo-dominate na party, dun nakiki-join na ang ibang mga partido and they act as one at it weakens party linkages. So, mas nagiging or napapalitan na yung democratic accountability ng clientelistic accountability. Elements that bind parties and voters into clientelistic linkages with a specific focus on legislative parties. We have political clans, party switching, dominant short-lived parties, and pork barrel arrangement. Political clan, most prevalent and prepared form of organization in local politics which provide a ready course of supporters through long-standing personal network. So, itong political clan, organization siya ng mga tao na nabibilang sa large family or yung magkakapamilya din. Kung saan kaya nitong magbigay ng suporta. Kinship network has a unique capacity to create an informal political team that assigns a specialized role to its members, thereby maximizing condition and influence. Dependence on local political clans as the vehicle for clientelistic exchanges by the national level politicians, the senator or president, provides a strong disincentive for institutionalization of political party. So, kung nakadepende lang yung mga nasa national level sa mga political clan, so, hindi mai-institutionalize itong mga political parties. Political clan makes it possible to accumulate political capital beyond the term limits, even the lifetime of a single politician. So, kinukuha nila ang mga capital para makapag-provide sila ng vehicle for long-term generatorial clientelistic bonds. Strategy for survival. Political dynasties. So, itong political dynasties, these are the members of the same clan seek to occupy as many local positions available and to continuously succeed each other in these positions. So this is achieved by capturing the most potent combination of local executive power with access to national resources, holding congressional district seat together with the gubernatorial seat and big city mayoralty seat. So, ang example nito is Lagman family, wherein Edsel Lagman is in the Congress and his son, Edsel Grex Lagman, is the current vice governor, and his daughter, Crisel Lagman Luistro, is the current mayor of Tabaco City. So that is how or that is the strategy for survival of political dynasties. Party switching, open occurs twice in an election. Pre-election party switching, when candidates file their nomination papers and raise campaign funds. So, for example, wala pang partidong kinabibilangan ng isang kandidato. So, pwede siyang mahanap ng administrative party to gain campaign funds, or pwede rin siyang lumipat ng iba pang partido kung sa tingin niya mas malaki ang makukuha niya doon na campaign funds in order for him or her to be elected. And post-election party switching, when elected officials affiliate themselves with the winning party to gain access to patronage. So, kung may nanalo na at nakikipag-switch sila sa party ng winning elected officials. Out-switch party switching, abandonment of one party label in favor of another. Enriched party switching, formal adaptation of new label after having another label. In terms of direction, an average of 60.5% of all party switchers between 1987 and 2010 moved to the ruling or dominant party. So, kung sino ba for example, during the term of our current president, ang party niya ang political party niya is the PDP Laban. So, lilipat yung ibang na mga nasa pwesto sa PDP Laban para lang ang purpose nito is to access to state to access to patronage resources. Party switching has fueled the rise of monolithic parties that have dominated several administrations in the past 3 decades, from Kilusang Bagong Lipunan under Ferdinand Marcos to the laban ng Demokratikong Pilipino during the term of Corazon Aquino, followed by the Lakas and UCD founded by Fidel V. Ramos, and the laban ng Makabayang Masang Pilipino of Joseph Estrada, built on political clans and dynasties that constantly switch their affiliation from one administration party to another in order to gain access to state resources and patronage. The Liberal Party succeeded in getting Benigno Aquino III elected as the 15th President of the Philippines. No sooner than the proclamation of the new president had been announced, defectors from the losing parties started jumping into LP bandwagon. From the original 45 elected representatives, the party ranked in the lower chamber nearly doubled, enabling it to capture the House speakership. So, lumipat sa Liberal Party yung karamihan, pero ang LP or yung Liberal Party nagkaroon lang sila ng limit kung ilan yung tatanggapin na party switcher in order for them to capture the House speakership. Pork barrel politics, legacies of American colonial tutelage in the Philippines. So ito ang turo ng mga Amerikano sa Pilipinas. Pork barrel allocations, budgetary spending intended to benefit limited groups of constituents in return for their political supports. So, we have two types of legislative pork barrel. The sub-infrastructure projects identified and implemented under PDAP or the Priority Development Assistance Funds and refer to non-infrastructure projects like scholarship programs, medical assistance to indigent patients in government hospitals, livelihood support programs, and purchase of the IT equipment and financial assistance to local government units. We also have the hard infrastructure project, small infrastructure projects reflected in the General Appropriation Acts under individual district allocations and under the Department of Public Works and Highways, locally funded nationwide lump sum appropriation. So, nasa under ito ang hard infrastructure ng DPWH. At pwedeng kasama din dito yung mga patulay or waiting shed na ginagawa. Filipino politicians can translate pork barrel into political advantage leading to re-election. So, pwede nilang gamitin yung budget ng pork barrel para sila ay ma-elect ulit. Two kinds of explanation for pork barrel distribution in Congress. Supply side focuses on leadership discretion and control over party members in Congress through mobilization of pork barrel. And the second one is the demand side, emphasizes the legislator status in Congress, their expertise and seniority as determining factors and distribution. So, kung matagal ka na sa serbisyo as congressman, so pwedeng malaki na yung i-demand mong budget for pork barrel. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in the then ruling Lakas Party utilized the allocation for pork for consolidating political support amidst allegations of fraud committed by her party in 2004 presidential election. So, as we all know, it is GMA who committed fraud, but as stated here, it is her party that committed the fraud. June 2005, the allegation was substantiated. So, lumabas na yung katotohanan with the release of the recordings of wiretap conversations between the president and the high-ranking election official, which is Virgilio Garciliano. Arroyo avoided impeachment primarily through the use of pork barrels. So, a bust of pork barrel was distributed to the party. And yung mga party na nakipag-coalition sa dominant party at yung opposition party is almost 1.1% lang yung napunta sa kanila. At hindi rin naman siya na-impeach kasi yung kanyang wiretap conversation illegal ito. And of course, nagkaroon ng distribution of pork barrels. Ibig sabihin, nagkaroon ng bayad yung mga yung mga dominant party and yung mga nakipag-coalition na party. Clientelistic cluster network at the local level. It will delineate the decline of the traditional patron-client factional ties and the emergence of new forms of clientelistic cluster networks, or the CNN. So, from diets to cluster, enter the political operators, the rise of the machines. So, from diets to clusters, emergence of broker resulted from the increased linkages between what formerly had been relatively isolated communities rules by one or more traditional landowners in the outside world. So, with the broker, yung mga hindi ma-reach out na communities, nagkaroon sila doon ng linkages. Broker emerge as mediator between patron and client, particularly where patrons have many clients. Personal ties between patron and client have diminished, and the dyad is transformed into a triad or even more complex relations, even though dyadic relationships may still be at the core of the clientelistic exchanges that occur between patrons, brokers, and clients. So, broker is only the mediator of the patron and the client. Uh, Pero there is still the dyadic relationship between the patrons, brokers, and clients. Brokers, more popularly known as the political operators in the contemporary Philippine politics. So we have now the political operators. Brokers are generally tasked with targeting potential voters, mobilizing them for local political rallies, and getting them out to vote or not to vote through whatever means possible. So with the term whatever means possible, it can be legal and illegal. Political operators, usually tasked with carrying out both legitimate and illegitimate special operations for political campaign. In local parlance, political operator is potentially oriented person capable of linking up with local leadership. So sila yung nakikipag-network sa mga local leadership. Three types of political operators. We have the fiscal broker, the insiders, and the former communist activist organizers. And these three can overlap each other and operate on different levels or tiers of national and local government. Fiscal brokers, upper tier operators, usually nationally elected politicians or their brokers strategically appointed to key positions in the bureaucracy who presume a mandate to speak on behalf of their home province and, to a lesser extent, the region that could be leveraged to reinforce their national influence. So example, Sergio Osmeña Sr. of Cebu, House Speaker during American colonial rule and second President of the Commonwealth to earn a reputation for delivering central government funding into his province and region in the form of infrastructure projects. He is not from the landed nor warlord class. The clan he founded cultivated a reputation for delivering the goods to their regional, provincial, and city constituents. So, yung mga officials na nasa national level, dinadala nila yung mga projects nila or yung projects within their regional or provincial level, or pwede rin nasa within their city constituents. Fiscal brokers, presently they tend to maintain a close network of public work contractors who are reliable sources of campaign funds and money to oil the local political machines. Politician contractors, public work contractors who have successfully run for congressional and local seats. Once elected, they spend most of their time lobbying for their public works contracts with the national government. The next one is the insider. They are the upper to middle tier operators who have spent a large part of their professional careers in national or the local government agencies. They form important networks within and outside bureaucracy. So, kumbaga, sila yung mga professionals na nasa matagal ng serbisyo at sa tagal nila sa serbisyo, nakabuo na sila ng network within and outside bureaucracy. During the Marcos era, Ministry of Local Government under then Minister Jose Ronyo, so they include Ronaldo Puno, and Puno is a key strategist in the election victory of three presidents. We have Ramos, Estrada, and Arroyo. Another example is Virgilio Garciliano of Comelec, So, isa siyang inside political operator. Garciliano's wiretap conversations with GMA on cheating in the 2004 presidential elections triggered a full-blown crisis of legitimacy in 2005. Garciliano, he is an election technocrat and career bureaucrat. So, he accumulated deep knowledge on election laws and procedures drawn from 40 years of field experience and developed a wide network of operatives, especially in Mindanao where historically most electoral frauds have been committed. So, sa tagal niya na sa serbisyo at siya ay sa Mindanao, kumbaga sa Mindanao, dun kung saan maraming karamihan ng mga election frauds na nangyayari. So, madami na siyang natutunan wherein ginamit niya yon during the presidential election of GMA. Former communist activist organizers, low-tier operatives since they conduct their activities at the local level. They are former members of the Underground Communist Party of the Philippines or the CCP who have left the revolutionary movement and have become political operators. So, dati silang mga member ng CCP. So, for example, former actor Joseph Estrada to presidency in 1998. So, ang nagluklok sa pwesto kay former President Estrada ay a group of former communist activists. But ang nagpatalsik din kay Estrada ay another group of these communists. The organizing skills they have honed through years of mobilizing people are put to good use through rallies, motorcades, house-to-house campaigns, and election campaign activities. They represent a hybrid traditional election campaigns and guerrilla tactics. Rise of the machines. Political machines, specialized organizations set up for the purpose of mobilizing and influencing voter outcome through the dispensation of social, economic, and material benefits. These benefits are essentially patronage in the form of jobs, services, favors, and money distributed to voters and supporters. In the Philippine local politics, political machines are the main organizational expression of clan politics. When the machines functions properly, there is no need to utilize coercion or violence. Machine is also embedded in the local bureaucracy by putting their trusted lieutenants in key positions such as district school superintendent, police director, military commander, elections supervisor, barangay or village official, and etc. So kung sino yung mas pinagkakatiwalaan nila, so yun yung nilalagay nila sa position. Clans machine. Sources of funds may come from both legitimate and illegitimate sources such as regular campaign contributions from the Filipino Chinese or the Chinoy community or kickbacks, commonly called the standard operating procedures or the SOP, facilitated by government contractors. Another source of illicit funds are underworld activities such as the illegal lottery or known as wetting or drug trafficking labeled as narco-politics. In some areas, the local clan invests in local newspapers and radio stations. Another recent trend is the use of media in sport celebrities to dare ticket and encourage them to run for local and even national positions. So, example nito ay si Manny Pacquiao. So, he is a current senator and napakalaki ng influence ng media sa tao. So, kumbaga, through the media, nakikilala na ng mga botante ang kandidato at mas may greater impact sila. May nabasa ako na ang bumoboto daw sa celebrities ay less educated at yung mga matanda na. networking with various sectors of civil society like local faith organizations. So, we have the Iglesia ni Cristo. So, kung sino yung ini-endorse ng kanilang executive minister, yun ang ibinoboto ng mga members ng Iglesia ni Cristo. So, nagkakaroon sila ng block voting. Kung sino lang yung in-endorse, yun lang yung iboboto nila. So, isahan. So, lahat ng members, yun ang iboboto. Kasama din dito ang El Shaddai. So, parehas din sila, nagba-block voting. So, ang dami baga ng nagpa-practice ng El Shaddai. And I remember Brother Mike Bilarde endorsing certain politicians. Networking with numerous people's organizations, advocacy groups, and non-government organizations operating in the local community. So, ito yon, Communist Party of the Philippines, Moro Islamic Liberation Front or the MILF, and the Abu Sayyaf. So, nakikipag-network sila dito in order for them to have permission to campaign in the areas controlled by these groups. So, this is the clientele cluster network at the local level, which I already discussed. So, we have heard the clan. So, nandiyan yung representative, governor, board, councilor, mayor, and the machine. So, andyan yung LGU, barangay officials, public school teachers, local election administrator, police and military, local legislative body, and yung nasa operator. So, na-discuss ko na yan kanina. So, that's it. So, I have 3 questions. The first one, what are the advantages and disadvantages of party politics? Number 2, can we attain a truly developed country with party politics? Number 3, how does party politics change your views about elected officials, performance, and graft and corruptions?